Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today I'm thrilled to introduce a guest with whom I've had the privilege of serving alongside in the 3rd Infantry Division. Joining us is Dr. Brandon McCray, a retired U.S. Army veteran with 11 years of distinguished service. Brandon's journey is a testament to resilience, leadership, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. His military career included deployments to Iraq in 2004 and 2007, where he faced numerous personal challenges, including a significant moment in 2012 when he contemplated suicide. In 2014, he embarked on a unique and challenging experience in Antarctica, further showcasing his adventurous spirit and resilience. These experiences have shaped his profound commitment to improving the human experience in the workplace through his company, #IOMatters, and McCray Coastal Realty. Brandon has also successfully owned a franchise highlighting his entrepreneurial spirit. Brandon holds a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology, 2 MBAs, and several professional certifications, including SHRM, SCP, and Lean Six Sigma Black Belt. His dedication to personal and professional development is further highlighted by his role as a practitioner focusing on enhancing the work environment through humanistic and positive psychology principles. Today, Brandon will share his journey from military service to entrepreneurship, challenges, and an ongoing mission to foster environments where people can thrive. So let's dive in and warmly welcome Dr. Brandon McCray, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran. Brandon, brother, it's first of all so good to see you again after all these years, and I'm grateful you're here, man.
Hey, thank you, man. It's good to see you again too, man. Not often do you see a fellow veteran, 10, 15, 20 years later, and they're in better shape than when they were when they were in the military. So, man, kudos to you.
Yeah, man. Dude, so let's jump right in. You got an interesting story, and we got a lot to cover. So let's start with where you grew up, what early life was like for you, and what influenced you to join the Army, brother.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's a city full of hustlers and authentic people. But it does face a lot of criticism for kind of like a shady government, just some unfair practices when it comes to certain things, in terms of dealing with the police and just dealing with some of the government officials there. Where resources are distributed. So I didn't have a rough childhood. I didn't have a childhood like some of the tougher parts of Baltimore and Chicago and things like that. But, it wasn't all peaches and cream either. I had a great family. I had a mother, I had a father, I had a stepmother, uncles, aunts, just a lot of people that were there in my corner supporting me, always telling me how smart I was, always telling me what like the possibilities were for me, and some great role models. So, the reason why I wanted to kind of go into the military was because I always had this notion that I was going to be an astronaut. And so for me, it was just already written in stone. Like, I think I was watching like Bugs Bunny at the time. And then my father started telling me what being an astronaut was. And we were doing science projects where we were talking about the planets and stuff. And that like really, really triggered me to say, oh, I need to be the person that deals with that type of stuff. How do I do that? And I bypass like astrophysics, bypass all of those. Some of that stuff are my hobbies today, but immediately my mind went to astronaut. What do I got to do to be an astronaut? I got to go into the military. I got to get some flight time. I got to do these things. And so it's always been in me to go into the military. I can't even remember a time where I didn't want to go.
That's awesome, dude. So what happened? You ended up being a commo guy, right? Which is we'll tell a story in a minute about that. But did you realize like actually how much went into being an astronaut, or you just kind of got in and was like, this probably is a long shot and not gonna happen?
Yeah. So that dream I had of being an astronaut, I probably held it until I was about 17 years old, and started getting into girls and all this other stuff. And well, I got into girls sooner than that, but I was distracted, right? But like by that time, it's been so many years that I knew I was going into the military anyway. I didn't have like plans for college or any of that stuff. And so I went to a regional vocational technical school for high school. I was learning mechanical engineering. I went into mechanical drafting. And so I went to the recruiting station, initially deciding to go to the Air Force. And the Air Force, it was like a Wednesday, 2 p.m. Nobody was there. Every time I went to the recruiting station, nobody was there at the Air Force door. But there's this guy. His name was Nurkowski, Sergeant Nurkowski, tall, slinky dude. He was in the Army PTs back then. They were like black and yellow windbreakers and whatnot. And he was like saying like, I keep seeing you come in here. They're not here. They're not gonna be there for you. He kind of gave me a speech and talked to me a little bit about what the Army had to offer. By this time it was 9/11 had just taken place, and for some reason that gave me like a rush to hurry up and sign up, right? It gave me like this sense of purpose to hurry up and sign up. And so I remember he was talking to me about the military. He was trying to offer me like MP jobs and all this other stuff. And I told him I want to be an astronaut. He convinced me that a lot of astronauts came out of the Army. I was like, all right, yeah, I took that with a grain of salt, but I kind of went back and decided like the Army is the only at the time the Army was the only branch that would let you pick your MOS at the time before you sign up. And so I kind of took that and I said, you know what, let me see what I can pick, right? And I kind of thought about doing this pilot stuff. I think you had to be an officer to do that, warrant officer to be a helicopter pilot. So I eventually I decided that I was going to do something with information technology. And that was met with a lot of skepticism until I took the ASVAB, and then they realized, oh, yeah, you can do information technology. So they gave me that MOS. But I did know how much it took to be an astronaut. Um, I got a funny story about that, but yeah, I looked it up. I had to look it up on America Online. And at the time, you had to like learn Russian, and there was a lot. It was a lot.
You had to learn Russian at the time? Well, I guess that makes sense because of the partnership with the space station, right? So, yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, and because a lot, I guess, like the instruction booklets for flying a lot of those crafts. Back then, you actually had to know how to fly those crafts. Now you don't have to know how to fly them, but back then, as posted on the NASA website, you had to learn Russian in order to understand how to deal with some of the mechanics on those aircrafts.
Cool. So you picked information technology. I call it commo. No offense to you. This is what I knew it as. Did you know that you were going to be doing what you actually ended up doing, or did you think it was going to be way cooler?
Nah, I kind of knew because I was building computers and stuff like that um, while I was in high school, right? I was on robotics teams, and I was like kind of playing around with trying to build software and install operating systems. And so I did a thorough research of the MOS based off of what was on the internet at the time. And yeah, for the most part, I knew I was going to be working on computer. Now I didn't know I was going to be in Iraq working on computers. I thought that job meant that I would not be on what they were calling the front lines at the time. And next thing you know, I was dead smack in the middle of a mechanized infantry unit.
Yeah, man, you were one of the first people I met when I got to the third ID, and the story goes, they sent me to the motor pool with this empty Humvee, and they're like, "You've got till the end of the day to get two radios. All like there was no cables in there or nothing. Go find McCray. McCray will help you." And I think you might have even been a sergeant at the time. I don't know. It's been so many years. I mean, that's been 20 years ago. So uh, that was probably my first interaction with you, and one of many that we would have over the years because always having to come get commo codes for oh god, I can't even remember what it's called now when we change over the radio keys, and yeah, comsec change, yeah. So let's talk about some of the key experiences you learned, probably particularly at the third ID, because you spent most of your career there like I did, right? Yeah, and yeah, same here. I spent 9 years of my 12 and a half total at Fort Stewart. They wouldn't let me leave. They even deleted orders to send me on the third deployment. I was supposed to go to Alaska and go to Afghanistan with that unit. Funny story. I know you'll remember. Colonel Wood was a brigade commander, and I was assigned to his brigade in my orders. And I was calling in every favor I could just to get out of there, just to go experience something new in the army. And nope, they're like, go to NTC and go back to Iraq a third time. And I was like, man, this is awful. Like, I just want to see the rest of the army. But let's talk about some of the key experiences that kind of shaped you as a person and a leader from your time in the military.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think that I think that one of the key experiences, and I think that this is probably one of the most important ones that I try to take into, well, that I tried to take into a corporate scene or anything that else that I've done in that matter, was the way it felt being welcomed into Third ID. When you come to a unit like Third ID, and I don't know, maybe this is something that all of the units get to experience, but it's particularly at Third ID, there was there was a sense of camaraderie, there was a sense of brotherhood because this is mostly male unit, and then there was also a sense of like uh, purpose and belonging, and that's a very important aspect of any organization's psychology or culture, right? I came to Third ID immediately. I got my I think we had Morn booklets. We had this thing where we had to put our hearing protection on our collar during motor pool day. I think this was like on Mondays. We were actually the one unit that sold our patches on our Kevlars. It was just a lot of like pride, and we sung Dogface Soldier song in the morning. So yeah, so there was that, and then it really kind of made you believe that okay, I'm a part of something that's bigger than myself. And then there's this other aspect that because we're a part of something bigger than myself, I'm going to welcome you as you're my brother. And I've had a platoon sergeant. I had Sergeant Foster, outstanding guy, man. I still talk to him to this day. I wish him happy Father's Day. But Sergeant Foster treated us all like we were his children. Like he loved us like we were his children. Then we would have like Sergeant Broadwater, for example, leader of the mortar platoon, and he was the same way. And so like there's like this sense of is a sense of like responsibility that comes with being a leader that also like taps into like beyond human resource management, taps into like I'm responsible for you. And so anytime that like a coach would be, so anytime that you would get frustration out of them, if you get some type of like correctional training from them, you knew that it was coming from a good place because they not only did they want you to survive on a battlefield, but they wanted you to become a better version of who you were, of a person that they knew you could be. And so I've taken that with me um, in every area, in every other area of my life. I take that to me, and I take that with me in parenting my own son, who's now 18 years old, and I take that with me when I deal with individuals in the workplace that directly report to me. And it takes a lot of work to do that, but I think by experiencing that over and over in the military, it makes me know that it's possible, and I don't necessarily mind switching gears for every individual based off of what they need when I'm dealing with people in the workplace. If that makes sense.
Absolutely, man. And I remember very clearly Sergeant Foster and Sergeant Broadwater, two great leaders. I had a little bit different of a welcoming because I was an infantry guy, right? And I got there, I don't know when you got there, but I got there in October of 2003. And I'm fairly certain they had only been home from the invasion for like 2 weeks to a month. So the infantry guys were very much not friendly to me. I was kind of the big piece of shit for no combat patch, no flag, right? That's the BDU days. And then obviously no rank on my collar and all that. But I do remember looking around and seeing what good leadership looked like. I can remember some bigger names. Sergeant Broadwater is one of them. Sergeant English, of all people, believe it or not, was a great dude. Man, and it's been so many years. There's a lot of guys I'm leaving out, but I saw what you saw as well, and man, the Third ID was such a great place because we did every single morning sang that song, "Charge!" Right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, I haven't sang that song in a long time. I'm probably sure I still remember the words to it, but you were something, you a part of something bigger than yourself, and it was very well known there. 27 infantry, a lot of pride in that battalion because at the time was the most decorated battalion in the army, right? Yeah, it may even still be. You mentioned you didn't know you'd be working on computers in Iraq. So your first deployment was also, I think, my first deployment in the end of '04 into '05, right? So OF3. What's going through your head when you're finding out you're going to Iraq and you're going to go do commo stuff, information technology services in Iraq? Because at the time, remember, this is '04, the end of '04, right? So uh, the technology of the world looked a whole lot different than it does now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. I mean, I think that at the time, right, I had like my high school sweetheart as my girlfriend and stuff, and eventually I would marry and divorce her. But um, I was kind of thinking about the life I left behind, but it wasn't a lot of life because at the time I was still, I think I might have been 19 years old by the time we actually left. That was my first deployment, right, to Crid and some of the places that we went out there. But I think that my thought process was I better hurry up and get married because if I don't return back, um, you know, my girlfriend or my wife at the time we were pregnant, right? And so I was like, if I don't return back, like my family is not going to get these benefits, and I'm gonna leave my family with nothing. So I think a big part of me was just understanding my mortality and realizing that I gotta put some things in action. And like what people don't like kind of see in Hollywood or in pop culture is that like there's a long time between it's a short time, but it's also a long time. It feels long because you're getting orders and it's almost not real to you, but you're getting orders saying that you're going to Iraq or Afghanistan, and then you're thinking like, not me though, like maybe I'm not gonna go, or maybe, right? And then it starts getting real when you start having to do like all this stuff for your will, and you have to go up and give like what you call those like a statement that like if you're captured you have to give like these buzzwords, like you go through all this training, and you're thinking like, oh shit, like this is really real. I better pack my boxes up. Like it's the logistical challenges that's involved. You gotta like cancel your lease, but like where you gonna stay in the 2 weeks that you're supposed to deploy? Next thing you know, it's a month. It's just all types of shit. So I didn't really have a lot of time to reflect on it. But some of the things I did reflect on was the fact that I may not even be here when I come back. And then the other part of it is like, well, if I'm not gonna be here, then what do I give a shit if what happens to my printer and my clothes and all that? So it's just your brain goes back and forth with it, I guess.
Dude, that's awesome to hear you say that because I remember that deployment also. A lot of guys scrambled to get married, right? Wrestling with mortality, thinking, we had orders for it. It was very well known that the third ID was going to be deployed a lot, particularly like getting back from that first one and having orders to go on the second one when we were on the parade field, right? Like that's insane. But unpacking all of that, it's like this is like the shit that trips dudes up, right? Like wrestling with mortality, it's very real when you start going through the SRP process and you're doing your layouts to check your packing list, and then you show up on the day you're supposed to leave and you just mill around for hours and hours and hours, and then they would take us to Hunter, right? They take us to Hunter Army Airfield and put us in that giant fucking room, and you'd sit there for more hours and more hours and more hours, and you're just like, okay, can we get this fucking over with already? Like let's just get in this so I can deal with it, right? Now I love that you talked about that, man. And last thing before we dive into your transition, how do you feel your military experiences have shaped the way you live your life today and influenced all of the decisions, the certifications, the degrees, the experiences that you've had?
Um, the military made me really believe that I can do anything I put my mind to. I that growth mindset mentality comes from the military. I think that, like, PhD, two MBAs, none of that stuff is in my mind. It's not. I didn't get that stuff because I'm smart. There's a lot of smart people that don't have that. There's a lot of dumb people that have that as well. I think I got it because of discipline, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to be an athlete to run a marathon. You just really need to train and have the discipline and just understand your breathing techniques and stuff like that. And I think that the military gave me that opportunity because early in the military, I was forced into stuff. I didn't necessarily want to become a sergeant after 2.5 years in the military. I didn't necessarily, in my mind, that wasn't even a thing I was thinking about. I didn't necessarily want to go to extended DMS training to learn about digital satellites and stuff, but I just would come out orders, or somebody else would see something in me and push me into situations. They would push me to be a sharp representative, then an equal opportunity representative, then a AIT instructor, and so on and so forth. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I already have a job. I'm an IT guy. Why do you keep making me? Why do I keep having multiple jobs while I'm in the military? I don't want to have all these extra duties. I don't want all these extra ribbons. I don't want to be a combat lifesaver. I never vocally said that, but in my mind, I'm just thinking, like, what the hell are they sending me this stuff for? Are they hazing me? And what I've come to realize is that um, if I just put my mind to something, if I dedicate myself to something, then I'm gonna learn from it. And then what happens is you get this compound interest effect. And so, like, now, what I've just learned, like the thing that I just learned, applies in a whole completely different realm of a different topic, because now I understand some aspect of this other thing, right? And so that it just changes. Every time I learn something, it changes my outlook on the next thing, making the next thing much easier to learn. And so all these shared experience, all these various experiences somehow fit together to shape the way that I get to see the world. And so I took that with me when I came out of the military. And so now when they say, "Oh, you're gonna go to Antarctica," no problem. I've survived. I've survived like all types of other stuff. And so I treated Antarctica like it was just another deployment. I knew, like, this is my A bag, this is my B bag, right?
Did you paint it tan on the bottom and put your stencil?
No, that I didn't have to do. They actually gave us some orange bags and stuff. But I did take my marker and mark it, because I said there's probably gonna be other orange bags there. So I marked my orange bag, definitely.
That's awesome. So when did you actually get out? When was and what led to the decision, or was the decision like for me, the decision was made by the Army for me. They're like, you can't do your job anymore, med board, bye, right? Which is a whole nother kind of issue that we as soldiers have to deal with, or just as members of the military, right, have to deal with when they tell you, because at that point I'm a career guy at 12 years. I'm a career guy, like I'm staying in forever. So what happened that led to the decision for you getting out?
Yeah. I think for me, after my second deployment, I was a little broken up about a lot of things, and I was on meds. And some of those meds were really messing with the way that my brain thought, right? I like to consider myself a logical person. I'm very, very level-headed. And I can deal with a great amount of trauma and stress, and just kind of work within my own faculties to overcome these things. But whatever the medicine that I was like on, something that like kind of suppressed my thoughts. But then I was also on sleeping medication. That's like it's like horse tranquilizers. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I was on these different meds, and it really started messing with me to the point where when I was going through training, I was having like breakdowns, like I was having panic attacks. I was like crying. I had snot coming out. It was just weird, and I could not control my emotions. I couldn't suppress them, and then I would have like reminders and stuff like that. And I'm thinking like, oh shit, maybe this is what they're talking about with the PTSD stuff for real, for real. And I didn't really think it was a healthy choice for me to continue my service in the military, but I persevered anyway. And so I did get orders to go to Afghanistan while I was at Fort Drum, but I was also going through the med board process as well because I've had some injuries from um, various things, motorcycle accidents. I had a concussion the last time we went to Iraq, migraines, etc. So, with all that being said, I guess for me, I felt like that maybe my calling was to be something different and to do something different and take what I've learned and move on. So I went through the med board process. At the same time, though, I was a rear detachment first sergeant, and I had the opportunity to re-enlist to get my diamond. And so, because I was a sergeant first class holding that position, but I could have re-enlisted to get my diamond. And so, there was a bunch of stuff, but it was just a bunch of psychological stuff for me going on. And at the same time, I was doing my consulting work and struggling for paying child support, struggling to make ends meet. The army don't give a shit about you. They give more shit about your family at that point, right? So like just seeing half my paycheck go to my ex and then another half go to my living, and it was very tough, man. And I said, man, I can make some money doing some consulting. I don't have to sleep in these tents with rats anymore. I don't have to never see another Porter John again. I got to get out the military, and that's what I
Yeah.
did. Yeah.
Yeah. So did they put you on SSRIs? Is that what you were on? Probably. Oh man, I've just watched that destroy so and Ambien, yeah, and I've watched that destroy so many of our buddies, man. Just so many of the guys we fought with, and I didn't know you had. Did you get in that motorcycle wreck before we went on the second deployment?
Um. No, it was after. It was after.
Okay,
It
it
was
was after because you
yeah.
said you went to that second deployment, which, by the way, for everybody that's listening, that ended up being a 16-month deployment. You get to the 3-month mark, come back from patrol one day, and oh, by the way, there's a memo on the Chow Hall wall saying you've been extended another
Yeah,
four
you remember
months.
that? Yeah,
I do remember that. Yeah, I,
everybody.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Were you in heat with us, or were
Yes.
you? Yeah, okay, so I remember the night I got to heat. The helicopters land. We get off. The Marine. Was it Marines that we replaced? Yeah, the Marines get on, and then a mortar lands on that helicopter immediately. Like I'm probably, I don't know, 50 yards at most from the helicopter when that hits, and that was our introduction to heat that night. I remember that, and that whole deployment, that one really took a toll on me. That one stands out a lot. However, my Afghanistan deployment in 2012 kind of overshadows a lot of what we did at the Third IG just because it was so bad. But I definitely remember that deployment being rough, and can see how I know a lot of our brothers and sisters from that deployment have a lot of issues going on up here because of that deployment. So, it's not surprising to hear you say you were dealing with that stuff. The med board process, first of all, talking about you've got the opportunity with 11 years in. First of all, you're in E7 at what, 10 years, 9 years?
I made my. I got promotable in 7 years, and then I got pinned on just under 8 years.
Brother, that is smoking fast. Good for you. And then to be a first sergeant at 11 years would be incredible. So I know that wasn't an easy decision for you to turn away, because that's kind of, I don't know, that was always my goal, right? Just make E8. That's it. That's as far as I ever wanted to go. I feel like that's the point where you're not going to be as close to soldiers anymore after that, right? Yeah. So, what was your transition like? What did you deal with getting out? Uh, I assume lots of loss of purpose, loss of identity, right? Like the normal shit. But how bad did it get for you?
Oh man, I was going through a lot because at the time, right? Like I've contemplated getting out of the military before at year 8. I think I contemplated getting out of the military. Um I remember, man, I went into my sergeant major's office, right? And I think it was my sergeant. Yeah, I went to my sergeant major's office, man, and I just started bawling, man. I was crying, man. I just felt like my world was being stripped away, man. I just didn't imagine it to be and feel that way. And I think that I was kind of going. I was going through the med board process. I was doing the out briefing, out process, and stuff as well. And just reality was sinking for me. Like on one half of me was very excited about just being able to start a new chapter in my life because at that point the world was my oyster. I knew I wasn't going back to Connecticut, but I was like, man, I could take any of these jobs now that are offering me. Like I can take another contract. I can do. I was a volunteer firefighter at the time as well, so I was like, man, I can go into being a full time firefighter. I can do all this stuff, and but it's just I felt like none of that stuff really fulfilled me, and I felt like that now I'm going into like fields where I'm just making money for somebody and I'm not really like contributing to humanity, and I'm not being of service to anybody, man. And it kind of felt like I was devaluing myself or selling myself out in a way.
Yeah, I felt that too, man. And you talk about veterans dealing with corporations who only want to hire them for the tax breaks. And I think I've said this before on this show, probably on episodes that haven't been released yet. But still, I think some people think I'm full of shit when I say that. They like don't see it that way. But it's nice to talk to somebody who actually built a profession around making the workplace better. Talk about that for a second because I'm fairly certain that's probably an issue that led to 2012 and that significant event in your life, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like the tokenism, right? There's a lot of companies that will hire veterans, but they often see veterans as overqualified for entry level positions, underqualified for senior level positions. I actually just wrote an article on LinkedIn, but somebody was saying that they did. There was a quote from who is now somebody who is now an executive of human resources at CVS, but she said that she's done military intel and for 22 years, and then all people wanted to see her as was a security guard when she got out, and that still rings true. There's a lot of misconception about the military, right? I think there's about 8,000 MOSs across all the different militaries and all of the different between warrant officer, and non-commissioned officer branches. And a lot of those MOSs, military occupational skills, they translate directly into career fields that of our civilian counterparts. And people don't see it that way. They look at like MASH, or they look at Full Metal Jacket, and they kind of think that all of the military operates that way. All of military is autocratic, or soldiers only know how to be told what to do, or soldiers are always shouting at each other and things like that. And they don't realize that a lot of times, and some of the and some of the more technical MOSs, or the non-combat MOSs, the yelling, the shouting is discouraged. It's more about collaboration. It's more about dealing with the office politics. It's dealing with, um, um, you have to you have to have some negotiating power as well, because I may be a sergeant first class, but I got to talk to another sergeant first class in a different platoon to get the resources I want, because he could just as well give those resources to somebody else. And so, like, you still have to have these soft skills of influence and collaboration and negotiation and all that.
when networking, right? The army is so much networking, man. And I found that out the hard way. Like spending so much time at the third ID there for half my career, like you learn like who everybody is, who you can go to for what you need. They know you, and then you PCS. You went to drum, I went to Fort Lewis, and that all goes away. And it's like a game of, okay, well, now I just have more rank and I'm starting over this time, but I know how to network. I know how to talk to these people. I know how to collaborate.
Yeah, yep. But they treat you like that service doesn't count. So now it's when you go into corporate America after coming out of the military, especially a non-commissioned officer, more so as a person of color in America, having to try to go into this, it's like, yeah, you say you did this type of stuff, and I don't care if you translate it. You can. I wasn't going into interviews saying I was a first sergeant, blah 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 blah, Emma West, da 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 da. Da. I was actually converting this stuff to say, I had this number of personnel under my care. These are my direct reports. These are some of the logistical challenges that we've came and overcome, and some of this Hurricane Sandy. I contributed to Hurricane Sandy, my unit. So like there was these, but they're like, yeah, whatever. Like
Just
today,
dismiss it.
yeah,
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
like you should be a specialist fixing Outlook.
That's that's ridiculous, man. So you're dealing with that. Let's talk about the moment in 2012 when you contemplated suicide. What led to that? What was going through your mind? What were you feeling like? Why did you feel like that was the option?
Yeah. Um Honestly, I really think it was the meds. There wasn't a lot that I actually remember specifically about that time period where I was taking those meds consistently. I felt numb. I felt like a zombie, and I think that might have taken away my capacity to kind of self regulate. It I think it kind of took away my capacity to kind of even imagine or dream of something more so in the future of future state of things being better. And I don't know. I just
Going through a divorce probably
Yeah,
didn't
yeah, I
help,
was
right?
going through a divorce too. Yeah, and it was that was still a little bit fresh for me, but well, my divorce was in 2010, but like it's new challenges dealing with my divorce because I'm moving around the country and I'm going to Afghanistan, or at the time I thought I was going to Afghanistan, but I
You've
had
got a
this.
son, right? Your
Yep,
son,
I
I
have a
mean, that
son. Yep,
matters, right? Yeah.
yep. And I had this warrant officer, man, who was just a pain in the ass, man. He was always at odds with me. Um, and he ultimately he just wasn't a good leader. He really wasn't. And I won't say his name, but you know, um, it was like almost this. It was as if he really wanted to prove to everybody that I got promoted too fast. And so anything that he can do to kind of show like our army's turned to shit. Look how fast they promoted this guy. He would like go out of his way to kind of like show me out and say, look, his soldiers lost this piece of machinery. We didn't lose that piece of machinery. You guys decided on the tactic of in which to pack these boxes. You guys didn't keep up to date with some of this stuff. You didn't involve me in this planning, but somehow this became my fault. And so there was like this. That's just an example, but some of that stuff was just kind of continuously stacking on me. And on top of the personal issues, on top of the meds, on top of my impending doom that I kind of came up with in going to Afghanistan, that really just it just got to a point where I really just felt like I couldn't do it anymore, and I couldn't deal with it anymore. And I actually contemplated going up to a tower with my we had our rifles and stuff, but we didn't have any rounds. But I was thinking like, yo, if I only had a magazine full of some rounds, I would go up to that tower and blow my head off right now.
What saved you from that, brother? First of all, I'm glad you're still here. I'm glad that we're able to reconnect and do this show, and I get to catch up with you. I always liked you, man. You were always respectful to me. You always helped me out when I needed help, and I definitely appreciate that. And I appreciate and I'm grateful that you're here today to share your story because that's why I started this show, dude. I'm tired of the notifications. I'm tired of picking up my phone to dead brothers and sisters, some of the finest men and women we ever served with, taking their lives, and it's sad. It hurts all over again. So, saying that, I'm glad that you're here. What saved you from that? What do you think that was?
I think it was kind of like a combination of the logistics of thinking of trying to procure the rounds and actually having to put a plan in motion to get some rounds to do that. When I talk about rounds, I'm talking about bullets for those that don't know. Um, and then I think another, and maybe if I had the rounds, I probably still would not have done it because it's kind of hard to pull that trigger when you're actually aiming at a live target. It's not like it is in the movies. And then I just kind of had a faith that things would go better, and they did, um, absolutely did. But
So coming out of that, did you do any kind of work on yourself? Did you find some tools to help you get off the meds? I'm with you, man. And you're way more qualified to talk about this than I am with the education and all of that. I know that you've probably studied it, but I think SSRIs, I think big pharma in general, it is. Uh, it's bad. It's awful. And this is coming from somebody who is, I'm on the plant medicine train, man. Ayahuasca changed my life. In more ways than one. I am a completely different person because of that. I have so much more perspective. I'm able to view the world through almost a 360-degree lens and meet people where they're at and see that they're on their journeys and kind of just see through all the bullshit like that society has turned our brains into or whatever. And so, I am of the opinion that SSRIs are not the answer. I do think that through things like mindfulness, meditation, yoga, breath work, that we can heal even without plant medicine. And those are all the integration things that go along with, a plant medicine experience when done in the right setting, with proper facilitation and everything like that. So how did you end up off the meds and actually coming back around to a better headspace?
yeah, so I think when I started noticing that the meds were bothering me, I got off of the psychedelic medicine, but I kept the Ambien. The Ambien, I absolutely needed to go to sleep and sleep well, and I didn't get off of the Ambien until I went to Antarctica because, in order as a pre-qualifier to go to Antarctica, it's best to say you don't need any medicines, and so the only medicine I told them I needed was the asthma, my asthma medicine. So I went over there without any more Ambien, and I used Benadryl for a little bit to go to sleep, and then eventually I tapered off of the Ambien. But when I ran out over there, but I think what made me get off of them, I did tell my psychologist of the or psychiatrist of the situation that I was going through and how I felt at the time. Um, I I was like, they offered me to like go to some groups and do some things like that, but I was at a time I didn't want to share like my experiences with
Well,
like
and none of
around.
us do. Particularly, we grew up in the same army where that was very frowned upon. We don't share these things. And I'm sure you'll attest to this too. For a long time at the third ID, if you went and talked to somebody about that, it would end your career. Literally, would end your career. I watched dudes get out of the army from coming back from either the invasion or OF3 that you and I were both on before that second deployment, having these serious issues in their heads. Go talk to somebody, career over, like disappear, guy's gone. And that sucks. That's not the way that it should be. So I'm glad that you had somebody you could go talk to who did the right thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, though, it's part of the med board packet as well. So
Right, right. Got to get that percentage up as high as we can,
yeah,
right?
right. It's part of the med board packet. So like it can be a career ender that you can't conform, and that and nor should you have to either. Like if you have something that's going on with you mentally, like you have to survive and live the rest of your life. You can't act upon your ego and just say, you know what, I'm not going to get help. These people are going to look at me that way. Because at the end of it all, there's not too many people that come back and check on you after you get out of the military. You got your brothers that you have some very close connections with, and they're going to love you and come back to you regardless. If they met you and were authentic about meeting you and dealing with you in the past, they'll be so in the future. They won't blame you, and they won't come at you a certain type of way for you trying to preserve your life, especially after already having done 11 years of service, 10 years of service, whatever the number is. So You know? You got to live another day.
Right. So you are now a civilian. You're navigating the tokenism of corporate America, which, corporate America sucks. I'll maintain that for the day I die. That's why I wanted to do this and run my own business. I'm sure that's why you're doing all the things that you're doing. How did you decide, okay, let's get two MBAs, a PhD, Lean Six Sigma black belt, some other acronyms that I don't even know what stands for? What is that journey like for you? How did you discover all of these interesting things about yourself?
um, I have a passion for learning. Like one thing about me is I don't really like watch sports on TV. I can't. There's something inside of me that doesn't allow me to get riled up over um, one team winning over another. Like I just can't see it. I don't see how it relates to anything going on in the real world for me, the way I see the world. Um, but what I can get excited about sometimes, every now and again, there's like something that I may catch about sports where they talk about the psychology behind like LeBron James game IQ or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that's intriguing. But for the most part, no. Um, but what gets me there is learning, just the sheer act of learning. I care nothing about really being like the smartest guy in the room or anything like that. I just really like those eureka moments that come up, and I like being able to like put the world together in a different way. So things that I thought I knew in the past, if I learn a new element, like if I learn something like self-determination theory by Ryan and DC, right? If I learn something like that, it helps me process some of the things I've experienced in the past, like, oh, relatedness, belongingness, competency. No wonder why when I put these project teams together, these people operate this way and these people operate this way. Now I'm going to try to do it this way so I can make that work another way. So I think for me is just I get interested in a lot of stuff. I actually wanted to go to flight school when I came out of the military too, but I didn't. I wanted to do robotics for healthcare and make like arms and stuff like that. So I went back to school and I got my MBA. After my MBA in project management, I got an MBA in healthcare because I wanted to do stuff like that. Um, PhD in psychology, man, I got that because I was so fucking upset with another boss that I had. And he just made me feel like shit, man. He degraded me. He act like I was incompetent. He would tell people I couldn't read, and he was just a racist piece of shit, man. And I something in me just made me feel like, no, I'm gonna show this asshole. And like that anger the anger and the frustration that I get from having like bad bosses or bad work operating and horrible cultures really like pressures me to like learn more about it, and then go off and like it's almost like I actually want to create a company that will come back and destroy your company in the marketplace. Like that's the mentality that I have. That I get excited about that.
I'm going to show you,
Yeah, I'm gonna show
motherfucker.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
I let
thing is
my
that,
actions speak for me.
yeah, yeah. And so like education, nobody can take it from you. Like people can try to discredit you all you want. People will call me a fake doctor. I don't write prescriptions or anything like that. So people will like undermine me, call me fake doctor, talk about or just try to go out of their way to show I don't know what I think I know and things like that. And it's like that's not for me. That's just not. I know what I know, so I don't necessarily have to go out and try to convince other people I know what I know. I let my actions speak, and I develop a great lifestyle based off of the things that I know and how I can articulate and how I can rally people to feel good about the work that they're doing as we work on a team towards common goals.
Brother, it's awesome to hear you talk about, dealing with that racist, degrading boss. And like, I'm just going to show you. Like, I don't understand, first of all, how you're at E7, retired from the army. You've got all these accolades. I know that you've at this point you've been, on the 8 month Antarctica winter over experience, right? Like this all has to be, on your resume, or it makes you look good, right? When you're getting hired for this job, for this dude to sit there and degrade you, tell you that you're not worth shit, that you can't read. Like, come on, man. Like, you don't get picked up to go to 8 months in Antarctica if you can't read. Like, come on, right? And then to use that as fuel to get more out of life and just reach new heights and things that you may not have ever known that you were able to do is just
Yeah.
amazing.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, dude, I like you. I get into sports, but I watch sports more now for like the actual game. I'm still like a fan because I'm from Indiana of the Colts and Notre Dame, but like I just generally like the sport as a whole. And I do like the psychology aspect of it. I just didn't know how much I liked it until I was in college after flight school getting my bachelor's. I took my first psychology class, which ended up part of that class is going to the Western Psychological Association conference. And I got to do that and I was blown away. I really fell in love with neuropsychology. And I met Philip Zimbardo and a bunch of other really cool, you know, prominent figures in the space, which then turned into doing a an actual paper that was co-author with another guy from my cohort or my class, and we got picked up to present at the 2020 100th anniversary of the WPA on time perspective and its effect on PTSD in combat veterans. And it was really cool because that was like a one-way ticket to PhD in psychology. And then COVID happened, and we weren't invited back, and the world moves on. So, why industrial and organizational psychology? That's to me that was kind of boring. I don't know. Well, it was kind of boring, but I'm interested in like why people are drawn to certain things.
Yeah. So for IO psychology, I think for me it was just some of the experiences that I've had to experience, the highs and lows of my career and working in different industries. Again, like I was a volunteer firefighter, I was working in telecom, I was working in the military. I've done some healthcare projects. So like, I guess I really just really want to understand like what is it that drives people beyond that reward of financial gain, right? Like how do people take that financial gain and relate it to some of the things that they have to suppress internally in order to get that. And then it was also about the lows, right? Like the way that I almost said his name, but the way that warrant officer made me feel in the military, or the way that this one guy I was talking about at the it was at the courthouse, Palm Beach courthouse, the way he made me feel. It's like this is a thing, and nobody is really trying to solve for this thing. And human resource is more so about protecting the company than they are about protecting like individuals in the workplace. And I think, and I truly believe that in order for us to have better work culture in the United States, we need we need external professionals that are external from the organizations. That's not like trying to, I guess, serve two different entities, right? You're either going to deal with the humans or you're going to deal with the organization. The human resource had their place with the organization, but I wanted to do the studies that deal with like how industries actually have to how industries have to kind of regulate certain things, sort of say, or how organizations should look to best practice. Like not regulate, but best practice, right? I want to talk about more about best practice of like how do you get millennials more motivated? How do you deal with the leadership styles that millennials may respond to better? How do those are the type of topics that I felt like were very important to me, and so I pursued it.
You know, when you explain it like that, that is kind of interesting because we're dealing with a generation now that's born with electronics in their hands, right? So the leadership styles that you and I are familiar with from our time in the military and the army, right, are much different than these kids coming out of college now that have had a device that gives them the answers to anything they want to know, right or wrong, at an instant. And so I can see how that's more interesting than maybe I initially thought that it was.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's actually a perfect example, right? And so that requires us to look at job designs now, right? Maybe, maybe you can do more with less. However, the more that you're doing is more in terms of value, but not necessarily more in terms of emotional effort that's required by that employee, if that makes sense. Um, and so, like millennials and even Gen Z, they're able to take on um, they're able to they're able to process information at different rates and speeds than than the generation before them, right? And because they can kind of shift into their attention in these different areas, right? That might be a call for projectizing organizations that traditionally may not be projectized, because some of these people will now make great project managers because they can shift their gears and their attention span so well, right? And so, like, yeah, that those are the type of arguments and experiments that interest me.
That's pretty cool, man. What did you do your dissertation on?
Yep, I did my dissertation on knowledge management and temporary organizations, but also considering the factors of self determination theory. And I used all six of the micro theories within the greater macro theory of self determination.
I'm just gonna have to find your dissertation and read it instead of pretend like I know what any of that's about. I know that if I was to read it, I would understand it, but I'm not even gonna pretend like I know what that means right now. Um, that was always the one thing about getting a PhD that I was just like, nah, not for me. I don't want to. I don't want because it's essentially writing a book, right? That's what a dissertation is. It's almost like you're writing a book, and I know that's one of your future plans is to write a book, or you're already writing a book. So good for you. I'm just not a writer. That's why I podcast. It's way more
Yeah.
fun for me.
No,
um,
it was just you just got to cross that bridge when you get there, though. That's kind of like I mean, I started my PhD program in 2017. I had like 3 months left on my GI Bill. I went to church. My pastors told me to plant seeds. Don't worry about where the water's coming from, and these are called your banner years. I did that, and the next thing you know, I got a job, and they paid for that job actually paid for my dissertation my schooling, and it's I look up and I'm like a year out from graduating and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta start doing my dissertation. I'm in residencies. I do one residency, I'm all scared. I still have this imposter syndrome. Then next thing you know, I'm in my third residency already, and then I have to switch my entire design. And I still have a year left. Like I'm supposed to go through 4 dissertation courses at like 10 weeks each, and then I had to switch my entire design. But in that same one dissertation semester, 10 weeks, I switched my entire design. I got it approved. I ran the experiment. I did the analysis. I finished the dissertation during the vacation time in between that period, and then they credit me for the rest of for the rest of the year. They credit me, so I finished my PhD 1 year early, and I just jumped in, man. It's like you don't have to. I'm only saying this to say that like anybody that's watching, like you just all you have to do is get started and then just worry about the next day. Don't try to put the cart before the horse.
Yeah, man, it's like that day I had to come see you to get all the commo equipment that needs to go in the Humvee by 1700. I have no clue what I'm doing, but damn it, I'm gonna figure it out, right? Like hold your feet to the fire, be uncomfortable in what you're doing, and you'll be surprised at what you're actually capable of for sure. I'm not saying I couldn't have done it, it wouldn't have been fun for me. I mean, it probably wasn't that fun for you either, especially changing it and whatnot. And you also finished it like in 5 months total?
The dissertation, it was so like everything that you do in your PhD program, you're stacking on, right? So I would say from the time that I had to redesign my study and get the participants and do the work, it was a 3 month period.
Look at you go, man. Flying, dude. That's awesome. Let's talk about you have had an entrepreneurial spirit. Probably, I think you said it even started while you were still in the military, right? Where does that come from for you? And where were like what do you think your influences were? Like so for example for me, I grew up in southern Indiana. I grew up poor. I grew up in a broken home with some issues. A lot of people in my lives tell me I wasn't going to be shit. And entrepreneurship or being a business owner, none of that was ever presented to me. I was well into my mid 30s before I really even knew that I was A capable, B that it was an option, C that I could do it, right? And so what influenced you? Like, did you have good mentors around you? Were some of those leaders, entrepreneurs as well, and you kind of followed suit? They actually gave you proper guidance. Like, what did that look
Yeah.
like?
It's a combination of it. So my father was a firefighter. He's a retired firefighter in Bridgeport, but he always had a side hustle. Whether he was doing real estate, which I own a real estate brokerage now, so does he, or whether it's fixing cars. He like always had some type of. My dad is somebody who retransforms himself anytime he has a little bit of interest in something. If he sees like trees growing out and he's like looking at it, and he's like, "Man, that grass is so green. Man, I should be." He doesn't say like I should go out and fix my grass or do something. He says, "You know what? Maybe I could get some nitrogen and put that grass in somebody's thing. I could be the best grass cutting lawnmower. Like, dude, like, what are you doing?" So
He
that's what he goes straight to. My mom the same. Like my mom though, she's a caretaker, but she also cleans houses, and I used to go with her on house cleaning trip. And so in my mind, it was just like being broke. Being broke made me want to make money. My first, maybe I shouldn't tell my first. I'll tell it. My first hustle in Connecticut was making insurance, registration and insurance papers, right? Because my insurance and registration was going to be super expensive for me, and so I made my own insurance and registration in order to um I had a dot matrix printer. I had Staples had just opened up down the
uh,
road, so it's like pink, yellow, green, and white paper all stapled to each other. You put it through the typewriter or whatever, dot matrix, and you print off your stuff, right? And then it looks official because it's on these papers, and you scan the progressive card, and you have insurance. And at the time, there was no database, so you go to DMV with your fake insurance, and they'll give you a registration. But if you don't want the registration, you can buy the registration. So I got caught doing that actually, right? And
this is such an awesome
yeah,
story, particularly because the technology of the time, the dot matrix
yeah.
printer. I could just picture all this now.
So I got caught doing that, and at the time I was a DJ, and the way I got caught was because, in Bridgeport, everybody understands, right? Like everybody has to find a. You have to rob Peter to pay Paul, sort of say. In Bridgeport, everybody has to like operate a certain type of way because it's the cards are stacked against you. So um, my mom understood the fact that like I was a DJ and I wanted to like go off and DJ parties and promote at clubs and stuff. And I was like 16 at the time, and I had this car. Right, I bought a Honda 1989 Honda Accord. Me and my dad bought it. So I couldn't register it. I couldn't insure it. Right, my parents have DUIs and all this other stuff. So insurance was going to be a crazy amount, like 600 a month for me back in like 1999 or 2001, something like that. So I so I used to drive my mom's car to go DJ at these parties, but my mom happened to need her car for work. So she said, "Brandon, you could take your car, but bring your car straight back home. The party was only up the road, one this way, right?" So I put the fake license plate on there. I got my fake registration insurance, and I drive up the road. I DJ the party. I get the money, and me and my friend DJ West, I'll never forget it, man. We driving back, and I kind of look at the road to my house. I'm like, West, I kind of want to go to the other party. You still want to go? He's like, Yeah, you want to? I was like, You want to? Yeah, you want to? I said, All right, let's go. So I drove past my house.
That's where you fucked up.
Yep, I drove past my house, went that way. And then cops pulled me over, said I ran a stop sign. Um, and she noticed that my plates are now like Connecticut has light blue plates, but at the time they were transitioning from solid royal blue plates to these baby blue plates that they have today. And I happen to have that royal blue plate, and she looked at this. She was like, "This is registered to a gray Toyota Camry," and I was driving in a tan Honda Accord.
Whoops.
Yeah, and so I had to come clean, and she was like, "This is gonna be worse for you if you don't just tell me the truth." And I told her like, I DJ and I made this insurance and I made registration. I really just wanted, I'm just trying to make it here. And she understood. She put me in the back of the police car. She said, "I'm gonna call your mom. If your mom don't pick up the phone, I'm taking you downtown." My mom picked up the phone. Thank God, man. I ain't never been in no trouble after that. But my mom picked up the phone. She made my friend, no, the police officer made my friend Wesley walk home. He was like 2 miles. It was like a 2 mile walk. He a heavy dude. Um, and they towed my truck, or they towed my car, and the money the money I made DJing, I had to pay it in these court fees. I had to pay it in the toll fees. And the judge asked me, she said, "What are you gonna do with your life? You have all this intelligence. You're using computers to make this, and this stuff looks good. And da da da. What are you gonna do with yourself?" And I told her I wanted to be an astronaut, and she thought I was being a smartass. And my mom was like, "No, he really wants to be an astronaut." She said, "You know what it takes to be an astronaut? Yeah, I need 4,000 hours of flight time, and I got to learn Russian. I got to do all this other stuff." And she was like, "Wow, like you really like so you're not gonna do that if you don't tighten up." And so I had to tighten up, and then eventually that followed me on my I had to get a waiver for that to get my security clearance, but followed me into the military, and then after a while went away.
So just always just the hustle mentality of growing up is where you get your entrepreneurial spirit.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I look back on kind of my life. I you may remember this. I used to install car stereos at the barracks parking lot when we were in 27. So I had that little side hustle going on. And so like I can look back now, right, at kind of my life and see, well, I always kind of had this entrepreneurial spirit and trying to make money, just doing shit that was intriguing to me. I don't know why I just never latched onto it. What was your first like legit business in the army? Was it the consulting business?
Oh shoot, no, my first legit business in the military was it's a common I don't know if it's the DJing one yet or if it was the
When you said DJ, and I thought I remembered you being a DJ running around. Yeah, I thought so. And I almost think I remember you used to do it outside of the barracks, right? When we were all out. Okay. All right. I knew it. I knew it. So the DJ business was the first, probably.
that was the first one that I started getting paid for, was DJing. But in terms of like getting a business license and having to do things like by the book, it was McCray Computer Restorations. So in Hinesville, when I got there, I was DJing, but I started fixing computers for people on the side, and I started targeting companies to fix their computers because they pay more than average person. And what I did was I created pamphlets and I put them in people's mailboxes, and I had to go legit because the city of Hinesville gave me a telegram basically telling me that it was a federal offense to put things in people's mailboxes without mailing it. And so they told me to stop. And they also said that I was doing business without a business license. So I had to go see a lawyer and about like, what do I got to do to get a business license? And all this stuff isn't always readily available on the internet at the time. So I had to go I had to go get a business license. I had to do all this stuff to do that. And then I was all excited. I got a letter from like the mayor and stuff saying like, "Congratulations on your business." I thought it came from him personally. I was like, "Oh man, this is great." And so I just started going with that. And that was my first business.
That's awesome, man. Too bad it's not now. You getting that letter? It might be signed by Dexter Newby, if you remember him. I think
Oh
he's on
yeah, I
this.
know Newbie. Yeah, he's my
I,
frat brother.
yeah, he's like a big deal in Hinesville now. I think he's like on the city council or something in there.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I just spoke with him a couple of weeks ago. I saw him posting some stuff on. I actually reached out to him to see if I could get in touch with Sergeant Span, if you remember him.
Yep. I do remember Sergeant Span too. He looked like Judge Reinhold. Yeah. Yeah.
Tall, lanky motherfucker. Yeah, yeah. One of the greatest mentors I ever had in the army. And something that I remember about him that stands out, he always wanted to get out. And when he retired, he was going to start his own funeral home. And I always thought that was the weirdest thing in the world. But that's
I
what he
never
wanted
knew
to
that
do.
about him.
And I heard he actually did it in Atlanta. I haven't talked to him since he left Fort Stewart before I did. And I did ask Sergeant Newby because those two were like best friends. And so it's a small world, man. And it's really cool to see all this. So doing the DJing thing and then, McCray's computer restoration or whatever it was, I think I briefly remember that too. I think I had a shitty HP at the time and was having issues, and everybody kept telling me, go see McCray, go see
Yeah.
McCray. He'll take care of you.
Everybody's
Uh,
computer in Hinesville.
Yeah, yeah. So, I want to move into, after your time in the army, you bought a franchise. I have not had anybody on this show to talk about franchising, and I think you can shed a lot of light because I get a lot of questions from veterans who are interested in purchasing franchises. I'm scared of them. It's a huge investment, and I see them as almost like a trap because they're really hard to get out of from what I understand. But if you wouldn't mind, like, talk about what was the franchise you bought? What was that process like? All the kind of the details of that, because I really want to present this to the audience so that I have a better understanding and so that they can have a better understanding as
Yeah,
well.
sure. So the franchise I bought was CompuChild Technology Education. And I'm speaking from, I can't speak as a representative for CompuChild or anything like that. I'm going to speak from my personal experience back in 2014 when I bought the franchise. At the time, it was owned by a lady named Julie, and I think she partnered with someone else. She was really, really nice. And I knew that when I came out of the military, I really wanted to have a business, right? It was between like starting a managed service provider company or for uh, IT services or something related, right? And CompuChild Technology Education was something that really taught computer literacy to children. Um, it was targeted for children, but you can also do it for like the elderly as well. And so there's federal laws and then there's state laws that comes with being a franchiser and a franchisee. Okay, and so that's why I'm not gonna omit stuff, but you can't really like speak on it because of the fact that there's
Like
certain
NDAs and
yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
Yeah, got it.
But what I can say about it is that um, it was a lot of money. Was it a great investment for me at the time? I can't take anything away from it and say it was a bad investment, but I realized during in that process of owning a franchise, I realized that I was capable of a lot more. Because remember, before I said that when I got out of the military, I really wanted to earn somewhere around $70,000, and I was able to achieve that, and I did it. I paid, I think, $30,000 total. I got the LLC, I got the franchise, and I started. It was a lot of work. I had the T-shirts, I had pamphlets, and my territory was West Palm Beach. That's why I actually came to West Palm Beach. I wanted to go to Miami, but the territory was taken. I wanted to go to Orlando, territory is taken. Come to West Palm Beach, territory is open. So West Palm Beach, I had all of Palm Beach County, and I was able to go to these different schools, and I had some really big contracts, and I actually registered with. I was getting ready to pick up a contract with the Palm Beach School District as well. Um, I had hiring plan. I had the staff. You have to do all that when you own a franchise, but you have a lot of support as well. A nice lady named Barrow came down and um, she went with me to maybe 25 different schools to help me pitch. And it was like a left seat, right seat process. She told me, hey, you got to print off all these stuff. You got to go through this training, 3 days long. We went to all these different schools. She started pitching first, then I started pitching. And then next thing you know, I learned the ropes. Um, I had to pay my franchise fees. I think they were at the time 150 a month. Um, but I was bringing in some good money. I had some friends help me. Like because now I had to. I was also trying to keep the lights on by working another job as well. Like I was kind of working another job as well. So like there were times where, and it was frustrating because there would be times where I'm stuck behind a desk at my job, but the school needs me to be there for like a graduation or to like an open house, and it's so unprofessional to not have anybody do that for you. So it really it made me quickly come up with a staffing plan and pay instructors and teach them not only how to do this. And I got to get a supervisor now. I can't be the supervisor.
Yeah, you're like your feet are to the fire. You're like head first into this, right? Like you don't. I think my opinion of a franchise is you can't really know what all's involved until you buy the damn thing and you just get into it. And that's what scares me about it because then if you hate it, right, then it's so hard to get out of it because you have to find somebody else to buy it, or you're just going to close the doors and take the loss.
Yep. And that's exactly what had to happen. Because again, I was probably pulling in 70K, just about 70K from it, but I had jobs that were offering me 90K, and that's a big difference in lifestyle here in Palm Beach County. Um, but I would say that advice for if you're gonna buy a franchise, the brand recognition has to already be there. Like that's what you like. You're basically paying for a shortcut for the marketing, or you're paying for the brand recognition. Not a lot of people knew. They knew the Lego stuff. They knew about math, some of the other competitors, but not a lot of people knew about CompuChild. And so it was very hard to sell that value to parents, to their toddlers. And they're saying, my kid already knows how to pick up a tablet anyway. Why do they need to learn how to build robots through you? Like they'll learn that
Well, and
later on.
sometimes I think too, like with your particular franchise, teaching children and elderly how to use, to become computer literate. And I don't know the whole scope of it, but like that information is now readily available online. You can take a course for $50 and learn probably what you were teaching, right? I see them. I'm just up the road from you in Brevard County, and I see those code hacker places, which I thought was a really cool idea. Go sit in a building with, because there is value in sitting somewhere and learning from people who do this, face to face versus trying to take a course online about coding. I know because I tried, and it wasn't for me, but they're all closed now because there's just no like market for it anymore. And so, that's a really, really, really good point when you're looking at a franchise, the brand recognition, because then it's going to market itself, right? Like, but there's also hidden things. Like I learned about the Kumons, the math tutoring things. They have rules about where you can actually put that franchise. It has to be in a commercial real estate complex that has X number of foot traffic, that's anchored by a grocery store, and it has to be a particular grocery store. And I was like, Jesus, like this is insane. For those that are listening that aren't interested in going the franchise route, what are some resources for them to do the due diligence on the franchise and what all that entails? Do you know any like websites or something that are good for research on this, or has it been just kind of too long? I know it's been almost a decade. It's been a decade.
Yeah. Um, if I remember correctly, I think so. I kind of want to go into this area of like when you Google up to buy a business. I think it's LoopNet when it comes to buying business. LoopNet, and then LoopNet is there's also CoStar that's a part of LoopNet, but that's an expensive way to go when it comes to buying businesses, because the sale of businesses is actually real estate as well, right? And that falls into, so it falls into LoopNet and CoStar. But I think it's better to just kind of do some genuine, authentic research of like, meaning that you Google what it is that you want to your franchise. You kind of Google your franchise and see what the brand is, or you Google what that is. So if I could do it all over again, I would have probably said children enrichment classes for pre-K, and see what comes up, and see if even CompuChild would have came up. Or I probably would see I would go to the Yelp reviews of different preschools and see what people are complaining about and see if there's a gap. My way of approaching it is a lot different now that I've sunk all this money into it, and,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
and not necessarily lost the money, but I had to learn a lot the hard way.
You paid for expensive lessons.
I pay for some
I mean,
expensive lessons, yeah. Um, and yeah, I would say like kind of do a gap analysis, a real strong gap analysis, and SWOT analysis as well, strength, weaknesses, etc.
I like that. There's two websites I like to look at just if I ever did want to buy businesses. Biz Buy Sell is one, and Empire Flippers is another one. The downside to those is you can't see a whole lot of information unless you pay to be a member of the site. However, the caveat to that is it's well worth the money to be a member of that site, because you're going to have EBITA, you're going to have, ARV, and you're going to have all the information that you could ever want, furniture, fixtures, equipment, all that stuff. They're going to give you basically a peek inside the books before you even really are interested in making an offer, and then you get an even more in-depth look into the books and what it actually takes to run stuff like that. So those are the only resources I know about. I remember living out in Savannah after our second deployment when I bought my house and then lost my ass when the market crashed. I looked at wanting to do a Dairy Queen franchise because there was only one in Garden City and there was one in Hinesville. There wasn't one in Savannah proper. And the problem was I didn't have $750,000 in liquid cash to buy into the franchise.
SBA doesn't give it to you for franchises.
No. So I was just like, yep, this is definitely out of reach for me at the time and kind of turned me off to the franchise idea in general. So I appreciate you sharing that information with us, man. What is the biggest challenge you've overcome in business to this point?
Um, I think the biggest challenge I've overcome in business to this point is really just trying to find my own authentic voice. Um, like like I mentioned a couple times on the podcast. Um, I'm a black person in America, and I'm in Palm Beach County. Um, and it's sad to say, but like that comes with a certain level of distrust in some circles. A lot of times it's in the circles of people who have the disposable income to commit to your business. And so I think that I've had to overcome just kind of like trying to code switch in order to make myself feel or appear more relevant or maybe more likable to those who I'm trying to serve. And instead, I've I've put a lot of work, and this is part of why I have so many certifications too. But I put a lot of work towards working on who I am at the core. So instead of trying to pretend that, like instead of approaching somebody and pretending that I like their tie or I like their shirt or something like that, I try to be, I try to meet them like with more authenticity than that, right? Like I try to understand a little bit more about the psyche of the person that I'm dealing with. Like what's actually keeping somebody like this person up at night, right? Like Adam Peters, he runs his podcast all the time and he loves doing that type of stuff. So maybe I would, want to sell him a better microphone, or maybe I would want to talk to him a little bit more about the headphones he's using, the microphone that he's using, as opposed to saying, "Hey, I really like your shirt," right? Like
Right. Yeah.
in order to build that rapport. So it's stuff like that, and just trying to find my niche and find my voice too. I can't try to satisfy everybody, and people sometimes you would account it to like being a minority in America, but it's not always that. Sometimes it's you're just being disingenuous because you're code switching, and people are turned off by you not presenting yourself as your authentic self. And so that's
I love that you're touching on that because it's really about learning how to ask better, more meaningful, deeper questions of people, which then leads to more, I don't want to say intelligent because that's not the right word, but just better conversation in general, right? And it's super important. I read books on how to ask better questions, how to one of my favorite books so far is Never Split the Difference from such a good book on like the psychology behind how you ask questions and what that's actually doing to the other person, whether they realize it or not. And it's like it's really enlightening when you start learning that stuff because it does allow you to be more who you are. Like I'm a curious person. I love getting to know people. I love getting to learn about what makes them tick, like you said, what keeps them up at night, right? Like that's fascinating to me. And so like I think obviously that plays well into this and exactly what you're saying. Um, so you founded McCray Coastal Realty and hashtag IO Matters. I assume IO is for the industrial occupational psychology, right?
yeah, industrial
Um,
organizational.
Organizational, my bad.
Mhm.
Um, what is so McCray Coastal Realty is pretty self-explanatory. I assume that's just something that is, you know, building assets for you. I've had a bunch of realtors on here, not to shit on your parade or anything. Real estate's kind of boring to me. I'm really fascinated by what hashtag IO Matters is, and why you founded that, and what your mission is with that.
Yeah, yeah. But I will say though, with the real estate, right? Real estate, residential, commercial aside, I still use that to go on Sam and bid on contracts for janitorial contracts and landscaping contracts and uh, disposable dumpster waste management contracts.
We are gonna have a talk after we're
Yeah.
done recording because I'm about to get my SDVOB done. Like, I'm about 3 weeks away, and I need to really pick your brain on how to do this because there's so much misinformation about government contracting and being an SDVOB out there. I read a thing last night where a guy said it's gonna cost you $250,000 and take about 10 years for you to get your first contract, and I was like, "That can't be true," right? And here you are. You said you had a couple contracts before you even got out of the army.
Right in the military. Yep.
So I will use you as a resource to learn what I can in that realm. But no, I'm not trying to downplay the realty. It's just, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You buy something, you sit on it for a long time, it builds equity. You can improve it, cash out of it, do a bunch of different things with it. But the point is you have an appreciating asset. It's not a liability, it's an asset.
Yep. Got to pay to stay. So
Yeah, right.
when it comes to IO matters, though, um, so IO matters is really to help employees um, just deal with the work stuff, right? Deal with like I use the school of thought of positive psychology and humanistic psychology and strength based psychology. Okay. And so I try to work toward, for individuals, I try to work towards, instead of trying to fix what's wrong with you, you try to work towards what's your strengths and manage your limitations. Okay. So as part of this, as like, kind of how the outline of how I usually help individuals is that we do our meet and greet, maybe 15-minute discussion just to see if we're a good match, if you like my style. Um, and then immediately after, if they decide to work with us, they'll go through a strengths assessment. We start off with the top five strengths, but eventually we go into categorizing all 36 of the measured strengths and figuring out what's your top 10 and what are your weakest five, and then we figure out ways to manage them. So, for example, I happen to have a top strength of being an ideator. Okay, and so how is that perceived by people? Well, that's my greatest strength, and for better or worse, it tends to always work out for me when I ideate. Okay. But if I go into a corporate boardroom and I talk about, yeah, we're going to do this and we're going to do this and we're going to make our organization agile in 11 months, they're looking at me like, dude, you're impractical. Get out of here. Like they scoff at me. They don't realize that I don't realize that they see me as being impractical because that's my strength, but they don't realize that I've practiced being an ideator all my life. This is deeply ingrained in me. And so when I say it can happen in 11 months, I make sure it happens in 11 months. So these are challenges that individuals have to go through with all of their different things. Some people are relators, some people are maximizers, but they all have what's called barrier labels that mislabel them. And so I like to help people uncover that. And when I do, usually I don't even have to hear from them. Usually I don't have to hear from them for months, maybe never again, because that's enough to get somebody over some of the challenges that they're dealing with. But we also help people with longer term goals. Like some people want to pass PMP exam, so they need an accountability partner to deal with them every week or every other week to make sure that they are taking these larger goals and taking smaller bite-sized chunks out of these larger goals every week, week over week. And when there's their financial, like when they're committed to it from a financial aspect, because it's a subscription-based service, it causes them to act because they're like, yeah, I got to hurry up and finish this so I can stop paying this guy.
Right. So is it more of like a coaching service then?
Yes, it's a coaching service for individuals. When it comes to organizations, it's a little bit different. It's more so human resource business partner aspect, as opposed, like, I don't like to say consultant because it kind of tries it makes it seem like I'm trying to over glorify what I do, and and really, it's more like I'm a human resource business partner, right? It's I'm not going in like the prophet or like John Tariff on Bar Rescue, but although I imagine myself doing that at one point, but it's more so like coming in and saying, hey, you want your organization to be agile, you like there's you got to have a certain level of peace of mind, you got to have a balance of there's a balance of owners peace of mind, customers perceive value, and their lean processes, right? Or your overhead costs. And so I can help organizations be more lean. I can help them deal with challenges with turnover, like going to a bar, for example. We got a local cigar bar. They always have a lot of turnover. And so I can work with that cigar bar and say, hey, look, you always have this turnover. It's got to be costing you a ton of money to just trying to deal with, have pairing up your bartenders and things like that to double shifts every time you got to train them and stuff like that. But did you realize that? Have you ever sir, have you ever interviewed some of your people that just stop showing to work? No, after they show up to work, I just go get another. You don't realize that they're working off of Windows Vista, dude. Like that's the one of the biggest frustrations, that not only do you put this person here by themselves on a Thursday where it's ladies' night, but you're putting them there and you're making them work off of Windows Vista, and their cards are freezing up, and that's frustrating for them. Like here's some technology that can help you out. So there's things like that our organization does as well for at the organization level.
How did you identify this as a big gap in the market and something that needed to be done? I assume it's largely based on your experiences in corporate America, but probably also through your PhD studies as well. Am I
Yeah.
guessing correctly?
Some of it is that, and then also some of it was looking at Sam and seeing the government contract stuff as well. Like there's government contracts out there right now for asbestos, right? The business case is that someplace in Camp Pendleton in California, their cleaners got caught cleaning or doing some type of maintenance and not having a proper asbestos training. So now they put out a bid saying, hey, we need asbestos training pronto for 166 people, right? So I actually just put a bid out on that, because you got to have some type of human resource business partner that does that thinking for you. And when that need comes up, you don't have a lot of time to research exactly who it is I got to go to, what it is I got to go to, and the government can't do it anyway. They got to put that out to somebody. So I try to so I recognize that business owners, they just want to run their business, right? You're probably not interested, you Adam, you're not interested in maybe hiring people and trying to figure out regulatory stuff, and the simplicity of being able to sit behind your camera, do some interviews, talk and research things is probably appealing to you. Once you have to step outside of that box, it's probably easier, instead of having to research that on the internet and Google and figuring out what's right or wrong, probably easier to pick up the phone and say, let me call the IO psychologist that I know and figure it
Right.
out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, man. This is the part I enjoy. I don't like writing the emails, doing the newsletter, working on the landing pages, all the marketing that goes into it, right? Like I enjoy connecting with people. I'm a connector. That's what I like to do. I like to network and talk to people. And I think your company is really cool, man. I, I I particularly like the fact that you're introducing them to their strengths, because for a long time I didn't know what my strength was, and when I figured out what that was and how to lean into it and then recognize my limitations, the whole world opened up to me.
yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely.
and I see why your clients may never hear from them again, because when it was everybody talks about that light bulb that goes off, and when I figured out what I was good at and what I wasn't good at, and that it's okay to not be good at things, it's like, oh dude, first of all, like there's this piano off my back, and second of all, it's like my creativity just got multiplied by like 1,000, you know what I
Yeah,
mean? I could just run with this stuff.
yeah, yeah,
It's so cool, dude.
yeah. I mean, I truly do believe in the growth mindset, but at the same time, I also believe in the fact that intrinsic motivation and autonomous motivation is the best motivation to have. And so when you got to learn something out of the sheer fact that it's an external factor, or you're being pushed to, coerced to, or threatened to, it's like that's it's not the best way to learn. And so you can gain your competitive advantage and build a niche strictly around your top five strengths. And we do that all the
For
time.
sure. That's awesome, man. You talked about imposter syndrome, and I'm sure you probably still deal with it. I deal with it. I don't feel like I should be here doing this right now. I don't know what qualifies me to do this, but apparently people tell me I'm good at it. And so I'm going to just keep doing it. So, how do you, particularly because of all your education, and I know that you know all about imposter syndrome and all the behavior that goes on with it, how do you keep that in check?
Well, first, you are great at what you do. I've watched your this series, and I've listened to the other series that you have. And man, you're remarkable at what you do, man. I think that you are exactly where you need to be at, man. And if there's anything I can do to help promote and encourage you, man, you can always just pick up the phone, man, and we can chat about it. Um, I think for me, man, it's some of it is self talk and some of it is ignoring the criticism. I juggle probably every day trying to balance between trying to make myself appeal to others and trying to get permission from others versus doing the things that I know in my heart are good and that I should be doing. I try to stay regulated. I don't always go to church, but I do watch. I do watch my. I either go to church or I watch from the computer in real time when they host on Sundays, and I try to I try to do the right things for the right reason, right? Instead of worrying about my professional brand, I worry more so about I created a professional ethos for myself. And that ethos is what gets me going. And so when I am at odds between what I feel like people think I should be doing versus what I know makes sense for me to do, I lean more on doing what I know makes sense for me to do. And I trust that it's all going to work out in the end. That makes sense.
I love that, man. First of all, thank you for the kind words, man. I really appreciate that because I'm guilty just like everybody else of not all the way believing in myself sometimes. So to hear it coming from somebody else is great. I do appreciate that. I'm grateful for it. But you're absolutely right, man. When you learn how to let go of basically what you're saying is people pleasing, living your life based on somebody else's expectation of how you should live your life. The episode hasn't come out yet, but I did this with a Navy commander. Brandon Jenkins was a Jesus, yeah, Brandon Jenkins. He was a helicopter pilot in the Navy, and he has this thing called the golden path fallacy, right? Like with his career, every step of the way was laid out, and when you get out as an officer, every step of the way is kind of laid out for you. You're supposed to go into this corporate job and do some kind of consulting or project management or this, that, and the other. And he was like, none of that aligns with what I actually want to do. And it's what everybody else says you should do. And he came up with the idea that this is the golden path fallacy, and we can live joyful, fulfilling, free lives based on what we want to do and what we believe in. And so I love that you just you just go for it. You just stop listening to other people and listen to what's in your heart, right? Man, amazing. What's next for you? What do you what does the future hold for you, my man?
Yeah. So I do have some dreams to speak at a TEDx event. That's one of my that's on my bucket list. My bucket list also involves creating some type of invention because I do not want to leave this earth without making some type of small win for humanity. So maybe an invention that kind of helps people out. Um, an app maybe. But in the immediate future, I know that I have two books that I'm writing. I wrote a children's book already, but I really want to. I want to finish my agile playbook for corporate America, just helping organizations learn and be of the tenets of agile, which is more than just trying to be responsive to change, but it's also about the attitude and the culture that the organization has. And my other book is called Fearless Motivation, Spectacular Performance, and the shit that gets in the way. And that
I'm ready. I'm excited for this one.
yeah.
This is the one I'm excited for.
Yeah. And that one right there is actually a self-help workbook. And so like you'll literally have this big 8 by 11 book that you can kind of roll up, put in your pocket, and open it up and kind of jot your notes down and practice certain things to help you achieve your goals.
Awesome, dude. When do you expect that one will come out?
Um, I think that that one will be out around July of next year. The thing is that I got to get to a point where I can stop trying to perfect it because I have the manuscript in full. It's about 160 pages, but I'm also always learning new stuff. And as I learn these new things, I'm thinking like, oh, this will be helpful for this book. And I got to get to a point where I just kind of cut it and say, I can always make another book.
Volume two, man.
Right. I can
Volume
always make
two.
volume
Yeah.
two. So I got to get it to that point, and then take it into publishing and get it out there.
Well, I'll make you a deal, dude. I've been called. Feeling very called lately to public speaking, and I haven't pulled the trigger on it. So let's go do a TEDx together in Orlando.
I would love to.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. I would love to.
Why not?
I would love
Like
to.
we'll figure it out together,
Yeah.
man. Because I for whatever reason the universe is calling me to do it, and to sit here and talk to you, somebody I've known off and on for 20 years, like say that that's a goal of theirs. Like that would be a really cool experience. I
It
think
would
to
be.
go
Yeah.
to go put on the suit and tie or whatever we have to do.
Yeah.
But that would be awesome, man. Your core values, you've got a bunch, dude. Truth, goodness, beauty, wholeness, dichotomy, aliveness, uniqueness, perfection, necessity, completion, justice, order, simplicity, richness, effortlessness, playfulness, and self-sufficiency. That's a lot, man. That's a lot. Which ones of those are probably at the forefront of your everyday life for you?
Sure. So those are Abraham Maslow's B values, right? And um these are arguably values that one should learn in order to reach their fullness in themselves, like self actualization.
His
Um
hierarchy of learning.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's Bloom's taxonomy. But with that being said, though, I think that dichotomous transcendence is probably one of them. And that's kind of like your understanding of faith and kind of the legacy that you want to leave behind. And for some, that's whether or not you get into heaven or not. I try to be respectful of other people's beliefs, but for me, it's more so about just trying to live up to certain values that I know that the God that I worship wants me to uphold. Another one is justice. I do seek for a certain level of balance in the world, and I think that's why I think that's a big part of the reason why I went into IO psychology is just wanting to have a sense of justice and to just be an advocate for people who may not necessarily have the means to uh, defend themselves in certain situations. Um, and I would say maybe beauty. And beauty is really just trying to seek out beauty in all forms. And so, with that beauty, though, is also a level of appreciation, and that appreciation enables empathy. And so, if I could see beauty in a person and just say, "Hey, look, this is a human being who's struggling. They can be on having drug addiction, right? This is a human being, a beautiful human being who is vulnerable in front of this population. They are struggling with XYZ, right? It's it's easy to find the empathy to want to be a person to help them. You might be that one person that actually gets through to them. But that's I think that those are probably the top values I have.
I love that, man. We've talked about on the show before. I met another veteran who's a podcaster, and he talks about MEPS when we go in and MEPS when we come out, and how we need a MEPS for the transition. And his MEPS is mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual. And those are the 5 areas that you really have to work on. And I love that you touch on the spiritual part of it, because until I had a certain level. Well, honestly, until last year when I went and did the ayahuasca journey, I had no spirituality in my life whatsoever. And that's all completely changed now. And I'm exploring a lot of different things, and I see how much it makes a difference in my life, and how all the things because of that fall into place. Right? You talked about beauty leading to empathy. To me, that just sounds like gratitude and a gratitude practice, right? And something I've been talking about here recently on my LinkedIn posts and with transitioning veterans who are struggling is like, we all have a lot to be grateful for. And when you start expressing that outwardly, it allows you to open up and be empathetic of others, and just change your perspective on the world. And I love that those are your values, man. And I couldn't think of any better values to have. Man, I guess we're getting to the end here, brother. What advice do you have for transitioning veterans who want to become entrepreneurs so that they, you know, who have lost their identity and that sense of purpose? What advice would you give them to keep them from ending up in a place like you and I have been, where, you wanted to climb the tower, I put the gun in my mouth, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Um, Advice for veterans that are transitioning. I would say that they should not look at this as the end of their book, but just the end of a chapter in their life. You know, things don't happen to us; they happen for us. And so we go through certain struggles and we go through certain things. So we kind of get battle tested, so that way we can be of service to others. So I would say that if you're going through something, like, kind of walk through it and wear these scars as a badge of honor, and just try to understand that there's something more for you. You're not going to understand it now. You don't have to try to understand it now, but wear this stuff as a badge of honor, because when you go to tell those no shit there are was stories, the tough stuff that you're going through right now is going to be very well just another one of those stories. And then also just try to learn your strengths. Again, I'm a firm believer in a strength-based positive psychology school of thought. And so don't listen to what people are telling you are wrong with you. There's always a way to flip what's quote unquote wrong with you. There's always a way to flip it as a strength. There's always a way to manage it in certain situations. But brand yourself based off of the discovery of what you find are your top 5 or your top 10 strengths. Um, Once you find those top 5, top 10 strengths, use that as your way to navigate the world and the challenges that come with it. That I think that would be my advice.
I love that you touched on service to others, right? Entrepreneurship allows you to serve something bigger than yourself, serve other people's, when you do it with the right, you um, the right why, if you will, right? Like, don't be in it for money, but there's some kind of why beyond money for everybody. Then you've got, the piece about just being present and owning what you did, right? Like, presence is a big one. And holding space for yourself is the biggest one, right? Like, just being patient with yourself and understanding that this is an incredible transition period, unlike any other you've ever experienced. And just being patient and present in that. And I say grateful for where you're at, because you're right. Things don't happen to us, they happen for us. We're not the people that we are today without the experiences that we've had, the lessons that we've learned, and all of that good stuff. Um, how important would you say for veterans, transitioning veterans, is it to find a network and a community that you belong in, and ask for help and find some kind of coaching or mentorship if that's what you might need?
Yeah, it's extremely important. Extremely important. I mean, the Army, I know, like, as far as what we're concerned, we have like Army One Source, but you also have like VFW, you have the Strategic Veteran, you have IO Matters. No, but you there's so many resources out there. And all you really have to do is just find that one person that leads you to that compounding effect of finding yet another person in their network and another person in their network. But this world was not meant for any of us to do alone. It's impossible. It's not even in our nature. We're genetically bounded to want to be amongst other people. That's our survival tactic. And so you should take solace in the fact that, you know, other people exist solely because they want to help you out. Myself is included in that. So whatever it is that you got to work through, don't take a permanent solution because of how you're feeling today. Continue to evolve. Give yourself permission and allow yourself to continuously evolve, and look forward to the person that you will eventually become.
I love that, man. Give yourself permission. That's the key. That's the key thing. You need to give yourself permission to do whatever it is that you want to do, not what everybody else wants you to do. I love that, Brandon, dude. Thank you so much for that. How can everybody connect with you, find you online, reach out for your services if that's what they need, pick your brain about all the experience you've got?
Yeah. So they can go to www.iomatters, IOMATTERZ.me. You can also use the .com. You can book 15 minutes with me, totally free, no obligation. You can also reach me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name, Brandon JT McCray. I'll pop right up. And then also we are starting a Facebook page called IO Matters as well. It's a Facebook group that you can join in, and you can make declarations of some of the goals that you have. And it's an opportunity to network and share some insights, and just, kind of have coffee, give each other some dap, and just talk about some of the experiences that we are declaring. That is actually going to link up to the book. So the book, there's a part in Fearless Motivation that you're going to be asked to declare some of your goals out to the Facebook group, with the idea that people in the Facebook group will say, "Oh, I have experience in that. I can help you navigate through this franchise acquisition. Or I can help you navigate through finding, opportunities to volunteer." So
This is so cool, man, because I just launched the waitlist for my community, the Stronghold, which is essentially the same thing. It's a place for them to come be vulnerable, get advice without judgment, state goals, learn about entrepreneurship, access to people who have knowledge in areas, because I can't cover all of it. You can't cover all of it, right? And I look forward to being a part of that, man. As soon as it's launched, send me a message and I'll join that for sure. I I so enjoy the benefits of being part of genuine communities. You initially said Facebook, and I was like, oh, I hate Facebook groups. I feel like a lot of the veteran Facebook groups are just the most toxic places on the planet that just perpetuate the cycle that our community is in. But I know you behind it. It's going to be great, and I can't wait to be a part of it. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Brandon JT McCray, my friend for a long time. Thank you so much for being here, brother. I'm so grateful. Please don't forget to like, rate, review, share, subscribe. Help me achieve my goal of getting this in front of 1 million veterans by May 9th, 2025, my 40th birthday. I know it's a lofty goal, but I know that our community, if any community, is capable of doing that. And again, I give you Dr. McCray.
thank you so much, Adam. It's a pleasure to be here, man. I love you, brother.
Love you too, brother. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.